speak English? Then click on this flag.
Sprichst du Deutsch? Dann klick auf diese Fahne.
Click on a seat and we can get started. OK, from now on this is your seat. Have fun. Snow White and the Seven Hansels.
Hello, I'm Snow White.
And I'm Little Red Riding Hood.
This is Hansel.
And this is Gretel.
And you decide which story we're going to play.
Thanks and have a good time. But wait, I'm afraid you'll have to help me find the way through the story, which may not be so easy. You see, if we don't watch out, the story will keep ending differently. Here's a tip. Look out for the little arrows. They'll show you the way.
Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little girl. Everyone only had to look at her to like her. She loved flowers especially, and her pride and joy was a pointed red hat. And because she wore this red hat all the time, all her friends came to call her Little Red Riding Hood.
Red Riding Hood, have you got your hat? It's quite chilly today.
Yes, Mum.
Bäh.
For you.
Oh, another lovely bunch for me. Listen, Red Riding Hood, there's a cake and a bottle of wine in the basket. Be a love and take it over to Granny's. You know she's ill.
Okay, will do.
After a while, Little Red Riding Hood arrived at a crossroads in the middle of the forest. She stopped, unsure which path led to her grandmother's house.
I wonder if this is the way to Grandma's.
Some time later, Little Red Riding Hood came to a little house. She stopped in front of it and thought about what to do next.
That's not what Grandma's house looks like. Maybe I should ask the way.
Hey guys, have a look at this!
The seven dwarves were so taken with Little Red Riding Hood's hat that she had to sew one for each of them. And if she hasn't finished yet, she'll be sitting there to this day, sewing away.
Wonderful!
Do you really want me to have to sew a red cap for every one of the dwarves? Yes? No? If that's what you really want. Thanks and have a good time. But wait, I'm afraid you'll have to help me find the way through the story, which may not be so easy. You see, if we don't watch out, the story will keep ending differently. Here's a tip. Look out for the little arrows. They'll show you the way.
Little Red Riding Hood. There was once a sweet little girl. Everyone only had to look at her to like her. She loved flowers especially, and her pride and joy was a pointed red hat. And because she wore this red hat all the time, all her friends came to call her Little Red Riding Hood.
Red Riding Hood, have you got your hat? It's quite chilly today.
Yes, Mum.
Bear.
That tickles. For you.
Oh, another lovely bunch for me. Listen, Red Riding Hood, there's a cake and a bottle of wine in the basket. Be a love and take it over to Granny's. You know she's ill.
Okay, will do.
After a while, Little Red Riding Hood arrived at a crossroads in the middle of the forest. She stopped, unsure which path led to her grandmother's house.
What a sweet little bird. Which path should I take? That'll be the way to Grandma's.
Little Red Riding Hood skipped happily through the forest, enjoying the scenery.
What beautiful flowers!
Little Red Riding Hood loved flowers. How she would have loved to pick a bunch for her grandmother. But her mother had forbidden her to leave the path.
Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood.
Hello, little doggy.
Nice flowers, huh?
Oh yes, they're lovely.
Hey. Where are you off to, Little Red Riding Hood?
To see my granny.
Where are you off to, Little Red Riding Hood?
To see my granny.
Where are you off to, Little Red Riding Hood?
To see my granny.
Hey. Who's the basket for?
I'm taking it to my sick granny.
What about flowers? You're not taking your granny any flowers?
Oh yes!
Little Red Riding Hood looked at all the beautiful flowers in delight. She quite forgot that her mother had forbidden her to leave the path. At the same time, the sly wolf slunk off to the grandmother's house, where she lay ill in bed.
Go away, you little pest.
Oh, Granny will be so pleased.
Oh, where can Red Riding Hood be?
Boo!
Wow, there are even more flowers for Granny.
Suddenly, Little Red Riding Hood found herself in the middle of a huge field of flowers, the like of which she'd never seen before. Thousands of violets and pansies, buttercups and daisies stretching away to the horizon.
Yahoo!
So busy was Little Red Riding Hood picking flowers that she completely forgot about visiting her granny. And if she isn't pushing up the daisies herself yet, then she's still there picking flowers.
You really want me to forget poor Granny just because I'm picking flowers? Yes? No? No? Thank goodness! Thank you!
Who's there?
Little Red
Little Red Riding Hood. I've brought some cake and wine. Come in, my child.
After she'd picked a bunch of lovely flowers, Little Red Riding Hood finally made her way to her granny's. But strangely, the door was standing open, and she had the feeling that something was different in the little house.
Have you brought a little friend with you?
Grandmother?
Hello, Little Red Riding Hood.
Don't you understand, you stupid man, you stupid...
You look a bit strange today, Grandmother. Grandmother, what big hands you have!
All the better to hold you with, my dear.
Grandmother, what a big mouth you have!
All the better to eat you with, my dear.
As luck would have it, a hunter was passing the grandmother's house. He'd been tracking the wolf for some time.
Have you seen the wolf? Oops. Oh, who's there? That's a most pleasant song. Let's have a break. I can pick up the wolf scent later.
The hunter often dropped in on Little Red Riding Hood's mother, who was famed far and wide for her delicious cakes and excellent coffee.
How nice of you to pass by, Mr. Hunter.
With coffee as good as this, I could come a lot more often.
And if Little Red Riding Hood's mother had made enough coffee, then the hunter will still be sitting there to this day.
Do you really want the hunter to have coffee with my mum and not save us? Yes? No? No? Thank goodness! Thank you!
I suppose I'd better look in on Grandmother.
The hunter walked into the house and saw the wolf, who he immediately assumed had eaten the grandmother. He raised his gun to shoot.
Hey, what's wrong? Why won't you let me shoot? What now?
Huh?
Shh! You'll wake him up! What's wrong? Why on earth shouldn't I shoot the rascal? What are the scissors for? Ah, now I understand. You think Grandmother's still alive. What the... Who have we got here?
Help! Help! Get us out of here!
Thus, the hunter saved Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother from the stomach of the wicked wolf. They all went into the garden to decide what to do with the brute.
Oh, Granny, it was so dark in the wolf's stomach. How are you, Grandmother?
I'll be all right, thank you.
I'll blow him to bits.
Not in my house.
We have to finish the rogue off.
What's that doing here?
The wolf woke up, and before the hunter could do anything, he ran out of the house and vanished into the forest.
I'm sorry.
And there he lived happily ever after.
Do you really want the wolf to go on terrorizing the forest? Yes? No? No? Thank goodness! Thank you!
Shouldn't we use the...
No, not like that.
I know what to do with the wolf.
So Little Red Riding Hood took the stones and stuffed them into the wolf's stomach. Then she and her grandmother and the hunter found a hiding place and waited for the end of the wolf's siesta.
When is he finally going to wake up?
He woken up.
Who was that?
What a horrible dream! What's that rumbling around in my stomach?
Hooray! At last! Yes!
The wicked wolf was dead. To celebrate, Little Red Riding Hood, her grandmother and the hunter sat down together and celebrated with wine and juice and ate the cake that Red Riding Hood had brought with her.
celebratory serenade.
That was most moving, really.
I'm so glad it's all over.
Well, if it hadn't been for him...
And if Granny had enough to drink in the cellar, they'll be celebrating to this very day.
Thanks, I wish you lots of fun. But wait, you've got to help me find my way through the story. And that won't be so easy. Because if we're not careful, the story will keep ending differently. So here's a clue for you. Watch out for the little arrows. They'll show you the right way to go.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Once upon a time, there was a very beautiful princess called Snow White. Unfortunately, her dear mother had died many years ago, and her father, the king, had married again. But Snow White's stepmother was sly, mean, and above all, very, very vain.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
Your Highness, you're the fairest in the room, but Snow White makes you look like a broom.
What? Fairer than I? Well, just you wait, Snow White.
How may I serve, Highness?
Listen, Hunter, I have a job for you. What I want you to do is this.
And that was the evil queen's fiendish plan. The hunter would take poor Snow White into the forest and kill her.
What a beautiful walk.
Snow White, you're in great danger, but I can lead you to safety.
The hunter told Snow White of the evil queen's fiendish plan. Thereupon, Snow White moved in with the hunter and kept house for him. Although she was never allowed to leave the house, she was now safe from the queen's wicked clutches. And if she's not yet dead, Snow White is still polishing the hunter's crossbow.
Poor Snow White.
Do you really want me to spend my whole life cleaning the hunter's house? Yes? No? No? Phew, thank goodness.
Aha! Soon I shall be the fairest in all the land.
Snow White, I must warn you. Do you know what the Queen has asked of me?
The hunter told Snow White of the evil queen's fiendish plan, but he didn't want to harm the poor child and let her escape into the forest.
Maybe there's someone who can help me.
Snow White ran as far as her feet would carry her. Finally, she came to a little house in the middle of the forest.
I wonder who lives here. Let's see if anyone's at home. Hello? Anyone home?
Snow White couldn't believe her eyes. The plates, the cups, the chairs, everything in the little house was minuscule.
Shall I try a bit? I wonder where this goes. Oh, how wonderful! I'm just so tired.
As dusk fell, the inhabitants of the little house returned home. It was the 7 dwarves who worked in the ore mines. They were surprised to find that someone had been in their little house.
And who's upstairs sleeping in our beds?
She's beautiful.
I'm sorry, I was so tired and...
May we ask what you're doing here?
Well, it was like this.
Snow White told the 7 dwarves of the evil queen's cruel plan. The little men felt sorry for her and allowed Snow White to stay with them. Meanwhile, back at the queen's favourite mirror...
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
Your Highness, you're by far the fairest here, but Snow White over in 7 Hills is also a dear. She lives with the dwarfs in their little house, and compared to her, you look like a louse.
What?
Now the queen knew that the hunter hadn't killed Snow White. After much deliberation, she came up with a new fiendish plan. In the meantime, the unsuspecting Snow White was keeping house for the 7 dwarves.
Ow! It's all so cramped here.
Freshly baked, oh try my wares. Hello, my child. May I come in?
I'm sorry, but the dwarfs told me on no account to let anyone in.
That's very sensible in this day and age. Maybe you'd like to buy something anyway. What about a piece of cake? Or a nice rosy red apple?
I really can't decide. I'll have the apple. It looks so tasty.
Yes, that should definitely be to your liking. Well, you were the fairest in the land.
When the 7 dwarves got home from work, they found Snow White lying motionless on the ground. Full of sadness, they laid her on a table and thought about what to do next.
She was so young.
Poor Snow White. What happened to her?
Why on earth didn't she listen to us? I bet it was the evil queen.
Let us make a coffin for Snow White.
No! She looks as if she could wake up at any moment.
really must build a coffin for Snow White.
But out of glass. Then we can always see how beautiful she is.
So the 7 dwarfs built a coffin of glass for Snow White, who was still looking as pretty as a picture, and took it to a clearing in the forest. For long weeks and months they kept watch over it. Then, one day...
The prince! Oh, it's the prince! He's the prince, isn't he?
So beautiful.
See how he gazes on her. Oh, another royal wedding, how lovely. Funny trousers, though.
Oh, this hat is just exquisite.
The 7 dwarves waited faithfully many, many days, weeks, months, even years. But although Snow White still looked as beautiful as she ever had, there obviously weren't any princes available at the moment. And if they hadn't died in the meantime, the 7 dwarves are still sitting in the forest, keeping watch over Snow White.
Do you really want me to stay in the glass coffin forever and ever? Yes? No? No? Phew, thank goodness.
She is beautiful.
Oh! Look, she's not dead after all. She's alive!
Hello.
With Snow White and the prince, it was love at first sight. So the prince took her back to his father's castle, and soon after, the happy couple celebrated their wedding amid great pomp and circumstance.
What a beautiful couple they make.
Snow White! Snow White!
Snow White, you're so beautiful.
Who can that be?
A surprise guest.
The Queen!
What, huh?
What does she want? Was she invited?
What? You're alive?
The evil queen was never seen again. Snow White and the prince, on the other hand, had an unbelievable number of children and lived happily ever after, surrounded by their grandchildren.
Thanks, and I hope you enjoy our story. But hang on, you've got to give us a hand finding our way around. And that won't be so easy. If we don't watch out, the story will always have a different ending. Here's a tip for you. Check out the little arrows. They'll show you the way.
Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and their 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. Unfortunately, The woodcutter was so poor that he could barely afford the family's daily bread, which meant that they often had to go to bed hungry.
Huh?
Wake up! I've got to talk to you.
What?
Listen, we're all going to starve to death if things don't change around here. I've got a plan. Tomorrow we take the children out into the forest.
This was the wicked mother's cruel plan, to leave Hansel and Gretel all alone in the middle of the big dark forest, so that she wouldn't have to share the food with the children anymore.
Hansel, hurry up!
Coming!
But Hansel and Gretel had overheard their mother's plan and came up with their own. Hansel left a trail of breadcrumbs in the hope of finding their way back home again.
Do you really think we should?
Right, this is the way.
Their wicked mother led the children deep into the forest. There they had to lie down and wait for their parents, who were going off collecting wood. Soon Hansel and Gretel fell asleep. Dusk fell, and no one came back for the children.
Hansel, wake up! We're all alone!
So we are. Well, there's no need to be frightened. We'll find our way back, no problem.
Look, a duck!
Come on, I want to go home.
But the breadcrumbs which Hansel had left had all disappeared. Thus the children wandered deeper and deeper into the forest. Finally, they arrived at a crossroads.
Sure, this is the way home.
You really think so?
After walking for what seemed like ages, suddenly, right in the middle of the forest, the children came upon a little house made entirely of gingerbread and sweets.
Well, did I do well or what?
What a lovely little house!
At last we've got something to eat.
Crinkle, crankle, little mouse. Who's that nibbling at my house?
The wind in the eaves disturbing the leaves. Hey!
Gotcha!
Help! Let go! Please!
Old Woman was a witch and only had the gingerbread house built to lure poor children to her so she could eat them. Hansel was to be fattened up and eaten, while Gretel was put in charge of housekeeping.
This sauce will be ideal to accompany young Master Hansel. Look, my dear, look what lovely food I've got for you. This'll fatten you up nicely.
every day, the short-sighted witch felt Hansel's finger to see if he was fat enough to eat yet. But instead of his finger, Hansel stuck a twig through the bars of his cage.
Funny. Why isn't he getting any fatter?
So the witch decided she couldn't wait any longer and wanted to eat the children at once.
Hey, you! Come over here and see if the oven's hot enough yet.
I won't fit in there.
You silly goose. Even I'd fit in there. See? Hey!
Hansel, look out!
Hey, bring that back.
The thieving magpie flew with the string of pearls across and out of the forest, right in front of where the hunter was standing. In fright, the magpie dropped the necklace, which landed right at his feet.
Gotcha! You stole this from the Queen. You're going to be in deep trouble for this.
And so it was that Hansel and Gretel came to be falsely accused of the theft of the Queen's jewellery. As a punishment, they had to do all the washing up in the castle's kitchen.
Oh no, we're never going to be finished.
And so they lived fairly happily ever after, up to their elbows in soap suds, making sure the Queen had clean crockery to eat off.
Do you really want us to spend the rest of our lives washing up in the castle's kitchen? Yes? No? No?
Great, thank you very much.
Do you know which way we should go? Got a better idea?
Suddenly, Hansel and Gretel found themselves standing in front of a big lake. And on the other side they could see their house. But how to cross the lake? A bridge or a boat was nowhere to be seen.
What a shame we haven't got a boat.
Look, it's our house.
Yes, we just have to get across.
Oh, if only we had a boat or something.
How do we get to the other side?
Maybe the duck can get us across.
You reckon?
Duckling, as there's no bridge far and wide, take us to the other side.
Great, come on, we'll be home in a jiffy.
But not both of us, we're far too heavy.
Come on, Gretel.
Oh, come on, we're much too heavy for the poor little duck. You go first, I'll follow.
Well, okay.
Hansel and Gretel's father was not a happy man. His wicked wife had died in the meantime, and, as so often, he was sitting, sad and lonely, in front of his house.
Hansel! Gretel!
Daddy!
How wonderful it was to have his children back with him again.
And who's that?
That's our friend. Without her help, we'd never have got back home.
If you only knew what happened to us.
Oh, you must tell me all about it later on.
Look what we've brought with us.
But where did you get all this from?
That's a long story.
And so Hansel and Gretel and their father lived happily ever after. Do you want to go on playing? Yes? No? No.